Four men walked into a small basement rehearsal room in London. They had never all played together before. 1 hour later, they walked out knowing they'd just created something the world had never heard. This is how Led Zeppelin began. Not with a record deal, not with a manager's grand plan, with four musicians in a hot basement, and 1 hour that changed rock music forever. To understand Led Zeppelin, you have to start with the Yardbirds, one of the most important bands of the 1960s. Eric Clapton played guitar for them, then Jeff Beck, then Jimmy Page. Three of the greatest guitarists in history, all passing through the same band. By 1968, Page was the last man standing. The Yardbirds were falling apart. The other members wanted to go folk. Page wanted to go heavier. When they finally split, Page was left holding a problem. He had a Scandinavian tour already booked and no band to play it. He had two choices: cancel the tour and lose the money, or build an entirely new band in a matter of weeks. Jimmy Page chose the latter. What happened next was either incredibly lucky or the most important audition process in rock history. Probably both. Page's first call was to Terry Reid, one of the most respected young vocalists in England. Reid said no. He was about to go solo and didn't want to join someone else's project. But he gave Page a name: Robert Plant, a kid from the West Midlands nobody had heard of, playing in a band called Hobstweedle. Plant was 20 years old. By his own account, he was broke, nearly homeless, and going nowhere fast. Page drove up to see him play a small show, and within minutes knew he'd found something special. Plant had a voice that didn't sound like anyone else. Raw, powerful, almost supernatural in its range. Plant had one condition. His childhood friend had to be the drummer. John Bonham was playing in a backing band at the time, making decent money, and his wife wasn't keen on him chasing another rock and roll dream. Page and manager Peter Grant had to talk him into it, and reportedly kept upping the offer until he said yes. The last piece was bass, and this one found them. John Paul Jones, one of the most in-demand session musicians in London, read about what Page was building and called up to volunteer. His wife had encouraged him to make the call. Either way, Page said yes immediately. August 12, 1968. The four of them met for the first time in a tiny basement room in what is now London's Chinatown. They plugged in, counted off, and played Train Kept A-Rollin', an old rock and roll number Page knew from his Yardbirds days. What happened in that room in the next hour, all four of them have described the same way: electricity, something none of them had ever felt before. Page said it was really happening, really electrifying. Plant said he could feel something was happening, and they had to be careful not to lose it. In 1 hour, Led Zeppelin existed. They played that Scandinavian tour under the name The New Yardbirds. Their very first show was September 7, 1968, at a converted gym in Gladsaxe, Denmark, in front of about 1,200 people. The MC introduced Robert Plant as Robert Platt. Nobody knew who any of them were. That would not last long. By the end of the tour, they had a new name: Led Zeppelin, inspired by a joke Keith Moon had made years earlier about a supergroup going down like a lead balloon. Page dropped the A from lead so it wouldn't be mispronounced. One of the greatest band names in history came from a joke and a spelling decision. They recorded their debut album in just 9 days, September and October 1968. 9 days. The result was one of the most explosive debut albums ever made. The record came out in January 1969 and hit number 10 in both the UK and the US. Led Zeppelin had arrived. What those four men built from that one basement session in 1968 would go on to become 9 studio albums, some of the greatest songs ever written, and a legacy that still hasn't been equaled. Stairway to Heaven, Kashmir, Whole Lotta Love, Black Dog. All of it started in a hot room in London with a song none of them had written.